Stand tall and defend your allies and your ideals with Bravely Default Templar. The Templar boasts a variety of attack options, being able to manipulate their critical hits to deal bonus damage on their opponents, while falling back on powerful defense tools to guard the party from a multitude of attacks. But before we cover any of that, let's first take a look at the Templar's specialty, BP Limit Up. With this specialty, the Templar's BP count can go up as high as 4, giving them the opportunity to strategize more with skills that rely on BP to use, as they won't need to fear dipping into the negative as easily. It is important to note, however, that you will most likely need to invest in some means of boosting your BP charges quickly, as you probably won't be able to take advantage of this specialty as much without defaulting an extra time during combat, wasting an extra turn. You could be buffing, healing, or attacking. Either way though, extra BP is quite nice to have. First up on combat abilities is Heart Strike. This attack costs 1 BP to use, but has twice the attack power of a conventional attack, and will always result in a critical hit. This allows the Templar to immediately deal pretty respectable damage right out of the gate, though it soon loses its luster as the strength of other jobs quickly surpass the Templars. Since Heart Strike costs BP, mind your uses of it to not accidentally send your Templar into the negative. Next is Giant Slayer. This attack has the same power as a regular attack, but if an enemy's current HP is higher than the user's, Giant Slayer will deal 50% extra damage. This attack can be quite nice against bosses, since from Chapter 4 onwards, every major boss encounter have boatloads of HP for you to take advantage of the 50% damage increase. Do note that the Templar has pretty underwhelming agility, so the damage output of Giant Slayer will fluctuate even when you do get the damage bonus. Third up is probably the ability most people know this job for, Rampart. For 2 BP, the Templar will deploy a barrier on all party members that will block against 1 physical attack. Being able to completely mitigate an attack for all party members is very, very powerful, especially since with a decent BP battery, or Time Mage's Hasten World, spamming Rampart becomes very easy to do, allowing your party to withstand many attacks that they normally shouldn't be able to. Of course, it would be wrong for me not to mention that magic is a big blind spot for this ability, so if you intend to make your Templar the defense unit in your party, you will need to find a means of combating that weakness. Next up is Radiant Blast. At the cost of 40 MP, the Templar casts a light-based physical attack that will completely ignore the target's default status, while dealing 50% more damage than a conventional attack. This attack has 1 major positive going for it, and 1 major negative holding it back from greatness. The best part about this ability is that it can pierce default, meaning that most enemies in the game have no real way of lessening the blow from this attack, without weakening your Templar with debuffs, of course. Meaning that you can almost always get the most damage out of this attack each time you use it. Sadly, the biggest problem with Radiant Blast is that the Templar's intelligence and agility especially are abhorrent. Really, really, really bad. Because of this, the damage output of this ability is almost always going to be subpar to other options. If you intend to use Radiant Blast, use it on jobs with either a better intelligence stat or higher agility, so that they can get the full use out of the attack. Now next is Desperation. This ability adds the value of the user's physical defense to their physical attack stat, and then launches a powerful single-target physical attack on an enemy. This does come at the cost of lowering the user's physical defense to its lowest value, however. Thanks to the Templar's high physical defense and respectable physical attack, Desperation will deal pretty good damage, and they can also bite the bullet of lower defense fairly well. If you want to be a little cheeky though, you can always cast Protect on the Templar immediately after Desperation has been used to completely mitigate the debuff, allowing you to use the ability with absolutely no drawbacks. Though if you do this, make sure to cast Protect after the attack and not before, as no matter what your defense is at when Desperation is used, the character's defense will always drop to its lowest value. Lastly, we've come to Heaven's Gate. This ability will rain down light-based physical attacks on all enemies with the power and amount of attacks corresponding to how much BP the user had when casting Heaven's Gate. For example, the attack will be at its weakest when used at 0 BP, dealing less damage and hitting less enemies, while being at its strongest when used at 4 BP. If used properly, then Heaven's Gate can be used to deal massive damage, as it is one of the only attacks in the game that can reach a 99 hit count, which can be devastating if you intend to utilize Bravely Second. Unfortunately, not only does this ability have a 3 BP cost to use, but it also cannot be spammed with Mimic, as its power becomes weaker the less BP the user has. It's better to invest in some other form of attack rather than this. The Templar's support abilities start off pretty simple with Abate Light. This is once again another elemental damage reduction support ability, only this time for the light element. This Abate skill is likely to be the one you find the least helpful, as light attacks aren't very common among enemies. But it's there if you need it. Second is Physical Defense 20% up. This is a potent defense increase that can help fragile support characters or boost the survivability of your tanks even higher than before. Thanks to physical defense being very easy to raise, the benefits from this ability only get better the stronger your gear gets, meaning the support ability is handy throughout the entire game. Do keep in mind that it does cost 2 support slots, so make sure it's worth it. Next are the Templar's various critical buffs. Starting with magic and item critical, the names speak for themselves. When equipped with these support abilities, magic and items become capable of landing critical hits, increasing their effectiveness considerably. Even healing magic and items are eligible for crits, doubling their potency. Weapons and abilities that boost crit chance do still affect magic and items, so stacking those will aid in taking full advantage of these new bonuses. Speaking of, Critical Amp will increase the potency of damage dealt by critical hits considerably. Pairing this with Heart Strike and you will now have a consistent means of taking advantage of critical hits, almost guaranteeing maximum damage with each hit. Jobs that use katanas frequently like the Ninja or Dark Knight might also enjoy Critical Amp, as they will be constantly landing critical hits thanks to the high crit chance that their weapons have. Fourth up is Default Guard. This support ability raises the damage reduction when defaulting by 75%. This ability is another one that is excellent for fragile jobs that need some way of staying alive. I would normally say that tanks might find these types of support abilities useful, but you don't normally defend your party by defaulting constantly, so it won't be as helpful as you might think. One main use for this ability though is to slot it on all party members as a way of mitigating as much damage as possible at the beginning of a battle if you need to stall a few turns to build up BP. Next up is BP Limit Up. Having an extra BP charge on any job can be quite handy, especially if they rely on BP for most of their actions like the Valkyrie or Spirit Master. As I mentioned earlier though, I would suggest having a reliable BP battery in your party somewhere so that you don't have to actively wait longer to utilize this ability. Last up on support abilities is Armor Lore. This lore ability will raise the user's affinity with heavy armor to its maximum, allowing them to get the highest defense increase out of that piece of gear that they can. If you find a party member's defense is sorely lacking, maybe try slotting Armor Lore onto them to see if that fixes the problem. This is definitely nitpicking here, but I honestly don't know why this ability is unlocked at level 13. It seems like something that would be on the lower end of the job level lineup. So, looking at the Templar as a main job, I think a few things are quite apparent. To note some positives first, the Templar has very high physical and magical defense stats, allowing them to not only take a lot of punishment, but they can also take advantage of abilities that use defense as a multiplier. The Templar, like the Knight, can also slot themselves as the team healer, and while not performing as well as a White Mage or Spear Master would, they can still keep the party healthy while providing the occasional Rampart buff here and there. And speaking of Rampart, man is that skill good. Not only does it keep most enemy attacks at bay, but it can also be easily spammed if a BP battery is put on the team. But with all that said, the Templar's stats and abilities are also the job's greatest weakness. Due to an average strength stat and terrible agility, the Templar can't really hit the same damage numbers that other jobs can, even when outfitted specifically to do as much damage as possible. Every attack option this job has is either underwhelming when used on the Templar, or just completely outclassed in some form or fashion. The Templar as a sub-job is where it truly shines though, since stronger jobs can use the attacks Heart Strike and Radiant Blast to a better effect, while support jobs can sit back and spam Rampart to their heart's content with no regard for danger or BP loss. Any stat problem that the Templar did have can be solved by just playing another job. However, it is important to note that the extra BP charge and high defense stats don't come free on any other job, meaning that if you intend to incorporate either of those into your party, you will need to put more resources into making it happen. And now we move on to the fashion tier list. Tiz and Ringabel don a classic paladin look, with blue-colored armor, cross-plating, and a bright red cape. The circlet is also a nice touch to show the gallant nature of the job. I think this design is pretty solid. Not anything crazy, but it gets the point across. And I think the boys pull off the look pretty well. B tier for the both of them, though with Tiz a bit higher since I think he looks better in the design. The ladies' designs incorporate the red into the main outfit more than the boys did, giving the outfit more color. Agnes also rocks a tiara instead of the circlet that the boys and Edea have. It is a little weird seeing Agnes wearing full plate armor, but I do think she pulls off the look pretty well. When it comes to Edea, she really does look like her father when she wears this outfit. I enjoy the merge between the chivalric look and aesthetic of the Templar with Edea's confidence. It's a unique pairing that I enjoy quite a lot. Once again, I think high B tiers are in order for the girls.